Okay, now for the terrain in depth. So here is my class diagram. I mean, not very connected here, but terrain object manager to manage the creation and asset of the terrain object, and the terrain manager for managing active terrain and setting it in like top level actions with it. The two for iterating through and doing the test commands, the object itself, and then I have some states which I haven't really like interacted with much, even though I did create it to like defend against the terrain processes happening when a no terrain has been created. But you know it's there. And over here in the asset manager, here I have two separate terrains created for both the moon level and then the grassy level. So if we go inside this load function right here, I pass in the texture key, some terrain data, the map key, and if we go inside this load function, we do the same as we would in any of the other asset managers where we have a map and we verify before we create things. And if we go inside the terrain object, I moved grid cell data into its own thing just to make the terrain not have to lug that thing around. So if we go inside here into the terrain, we go and we read the bits, we do a bunch of initialization, we go through and create all our vertices, and as I said earlier, I am now placing it correctly at the origin as opposed to before where I was starting a corner at 0, 0, 0. And then I set up all of the triangles, all of the norms, all of the min and max values right here, and right here is where I'm updating the norms. And my norms are still not correct. I will be upfront about that, and I mean these nested calculations are absolutely the reason for that, where it's just very impossible to debug. But that is that is one of the things that I am just falling back on. And here is getting like the cell position from the position of the tank, and here is where we clamp and getting overlapping cells from the tank, getting a height on the terrain, which I use very frequently in many different aspects. And so if we go here, follow this, get it for the grow crystal, get it for the tank base. I use many things to get the height of the terrain so that we can have things be placed correctly on the terrain. And then the deletion of the terrains is handled in the terrain object manager. We go in here and we go through and we delete all of our terrain objects at the end. So the user doesn't have to worry about any of that. Just it's the same with the rest of their assets. So now to go over some of this grid cell data. In the grid cell data itself, I have this triangle norms, which stores each of the norms for a given triangle. And obviously, like I said, the norms are not correct, so this is a little irrelevant. But I store the min and max and I store the min and max of each cell inside of it as I calculated inside of the terrain object, and this helps with retrieving data for the AABB whenever we need it. And I think that this is more efficient than storing or recalculating these over and over again. It's better to front load that kind of work. And I will say that my terrain object is definitely not the most optimized ever. And I mean, I think that's obvious, but at least the data storage is not the issue. The issue is more so the extreme amount of calculations I do on the front end to do the norms, which are incorrect. And now to show some of the terrain processes working with the terrain collision. So here we see the segment getting generated. We have the height on the terrain with the barycentric norm and the different collision happening. We see the tank is colliding every frame. And just to prove that over here, we see, boom, we got in there. If we go over here into the command, actually, let's just see this working in here. So we go in, we get